We're good, Sam?
We are good.
Great, terrific. Okay, we will call the first meeting of the General Law Committee for the 2022 session. We'll gavel in remotely here. Thank you all for joining us for a very short session. I look forward to working with everybody. Glad to see everybody back. And we've got some items on the agenda today, which we'll get through. And I know my goal, and James will speak in a minute, and Kevin and Dave, I know my goal is to try to get these out for public hearings as soon as possible and try to wind up our committee business like we usually do with requisite alacrity, so we can, particularly in a compressed session like this, get everything moving quickly. James, any remarks?
No, looking forward to getting to work. As you mentioned, it's a short session. We have 12 weeks to get the work done, and looking forward to working with the rest of the committee in a bipartisan way as we have in the past. So thank you.
Terrific. I'm tempted to not even ask Kevin to speak because I'm still upset at him for announcing his retirement. I hope committee members, we will plan some sort of last meeting and get permission from our leadership to have it at a local brewery of his choosing. But Senator Witkos, any remarks?
Thank you, Mike. And I'm looking forward to moving forward and doing all the great work that we do on this committee. I know I always get busted from my friends on the higher ed because I claim that general law is my favorite committee in the General Assembly, and it's in part to everybody who's serving on this committee. But there are other concepts I know that we're going to be raising soon that are in addition to the list. So don't be afraid that why didn't something get on there? It's just timing. We truly work in a bipartisan fashion. So looking forward to get started.
I echo that as well. This is our first take at a list, and we'll be meeting again to give you some other concepts. I know many of you have suggested some additional ones for us to consider. Dave, safely parked.
You've safely parked. You all have certainly covered it all, including the part that our angst over losing our senator. So,
indeed. All right. So moving on to the bills for review, we've got 13 concepts here. Some will be familiar to you. They're concepts we visited last year. I remind everybody that in a short session like this, we actually have to have statutory language drafted before we have the public hearing. And Brian Valco is our new LCO attorney, so he's been working on this, and we've tried to narrow this to things where we actually have some language already fairly well constructed. So why don't I just go down the list and see if anybody's got comments on that. I just would preface one more time by saying just concepts for public hearing. Nobody's committing to voting these out of committee now. We'll see how the public hearing goes. We've always worked on that in a bipartisan fashion just to hear concepts, but then obviously we'll have a more robust debate about whether any of these are going to move out of committee. So the first is an act consuming consumer privacy. Could have a motion to move that for a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. James, you want to just comment on this briefly?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman D'Agostino. We've been working on this since last session. We had an unofficial working group. We had 4 meetings where we had a number of industry representatives, but we also brought in speakers from around the country to comment on some of the other bills that have passed. We had Senator Rodriguez, who authored the Colorado privacy bill. We spoke with the head of the Attorney General's Data Privacy Unit in California to learn about their implementation, as well as a representative from Minnesota who's also working on a privacy bill in Minnesota. So we're doing the best to align with the other states and seeking input and looking forward to the public hearing and hopefully moving it forward.
Holly, I know you followed this closely. Any comments on this?
Yes, I just want to take everyone at their word that we're going to work on this in a bipartisan manner. And having seen the burdens we put on our businesses, I want to make sure we're not creating additional hurdles and costs for them if we've seen them struggle so much during the pandemic. We don't, very worthy goal, but we don't want to make this an incredible burden. Medium-sized businesses who might be included in this. So thank you. I look forward to the public hearing.
Good. Thank you, Holly. And yes, we're definitely going to continue to work on this bill. Any other comments on this one?
Not on this one, but I was misled to think that there would actually be a meeting in 1B where I was. I want to.
Sorry, Senator. We'll get there. We're going to get there. We're going to get there together. It's good to see you.
Good to see you guys as well.
Yeah, we definitely will. I anticipate some more in-person meetings as we move through the session. Any objections to moving this to a consent calendar? So we don't have to vote on each one individually?
One quick question. Sorry for being late.
Sure, please, Senator.
On the privacy bill, there was a Bob Duff version, and there was also sort of a changed version at the end of last session. My recollection, it was based on, I want to say like Maryland or some
Virginia
Atlantic coast state, but it wasn't Senator Duff's version. I'm just wondering, there seems to be one on the agenda today. Which version is it? If it's a combination of them, or just can you give any sort of elucidation on that?
James?
Yeah, this is a bill that I've been working on. It was initially based off of the Virginia, but it is moved. It's pretty closely aligned with actually the Colorado bill, and the senator in Colorado and I had similar thoughts in terms of trying to go between Virginia and California, looking at them as kind of a floor and a ceiling, and trying to strike the balance between those two bills. So it very closely aligns with the Colorado bill.
Wow. So geographically in between as well. So really good placement. And Senator, may I ask, is this the one that you reached out to me in the fall and I kept saying I will get to it, and here we are in the middle of February, and lo and behold, it is before me?
Yes, it is. So I'm happy to, when we're up there together, spend some time going over it with you.
All right. I promised you, and I will deliver. I guess I'm more of a 2022 guy than a 2021 guy. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Fair enough. Thank you, Senator. Any objection to moving this to a consent calendar? All right, we'll move this to a consent calendar. Can I have a motion for an act to review an act establishing a supermarket food donation program? And I will explain that.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. This is to just explore the concept of whether or not there's something we can put in place in our laws that would establish a mechanism for our supermarkets to donate to food banks leftover food. We've heard over the past year and a half how many of those food banks are struggling and really have been strained. This is something that's been in place, I believe, in Vermont and California. But I know our grocery stores have some concerns with it. We don't want to be onerous about this. And we also know that DCP, obviously, we're mindful of putting any restraints on them. But let's hear the concept and see if there's something we can do, even if it's studying it further. But I'd like to explore whether or not this is a program we can pilot or put in place in some fashion in Connecticut. So that's the purpose here.
Mr. Chairman, I move this to the consent calendar.
Thank you, Senator. Any objection? All right, we'll move that to the consent calendar. Give a motion for an act concerning the Liquor Control Act.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you very much. This is really a placeholder for the committee for us to work up some concepts that some members have suggested with respect to further modifications of the Liquor Control Act. I don't expect anything, for those of you wondering, I don't expect anything controversial here. No wine in grocery stores or anything like that. But there are some tweaks that folks have suggested. Senator Wickos, for example, I know you had one with respect to the breweries and some other items we may want to clean up. We're working on that language. We'll get it to you well in advance of a public hearing for you to consider what those tweaks are.
Move this to the consent calendar, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Any objection? Thank you all. Have a motion for physician assistance in the palliative use of marijuana.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. We probably should be referring to it as cannabis now, and we'll probably make that change, Brian. This is something we looked at last year and wanted to hear again this year. It just is exactly what it says. Should physician assistants, in addition to doctors and others, be able to issue a prescription for medical cannabis use? Obviously, in conjunction with the doctor under the controls that are put in place for PAs.
I ask that this be moved to the consent calendar, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Any objection? Seeing none, we'll move that to the consent calendar. An act concerning deaf and hard of hearing interpreters. Give a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Again, the request from the Republican House Caucus to look at these regulations and requirements and streamline them a bit.
I ask that this be moved to the consent calendar, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Any objection?
If I could, I'm sorry,
Please, Senator.
I apologize. I've been working on this for quite a while, putting additional dollars in it appropriations. Does this in any way limit the number of deaf interpreters that we would have?
I believe the intent is actually to expand them, Senator, but I'm glad you were here and on this committee to raise that point. And obviously, I'd ask that you and your staff take a look at whatever language we come up with and make sure it conforms with your goals in that regard. We certainly don't want to limit interpreters.
Because I've been adding dollars each year relative to this to increase the numbers, working with the independent living centers so that we have them regionally. And there's also a concern relative to the training of municipal and state police officers, that they have some understanding on what to do should they come across somebody who is also deaf. So I just want to point that out, that there's a number of different deaf and hard of hearing interpreter situations that are going on, and we may want to make sure that we're not in conflict with each other. I'm fully supportive if we're looking to expand the services. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Senator.
Chairman,
Yeah, go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, if I could assure the senator that this bill in no way is trying to limit the amount of interpreters, it's the exact opposite. It's trying to expand the number, and we are happy to work with you on anything.
Thank you.
Terrific. It sounds like this might be a real nice bipartisan and bicameral piece of legislation if we can get it going. Can we move this to the consent? Move this to the consent calendar, please.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
So move.
Seeing no objection, we will do that. A motion for an act for the fair right of, recommendations by the Social Equity Council, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. We are expecting the Social Equity Council, consistent with the cannabis law we passed last year, to send to this committee various additional regulations regarding the use of adult use cannabis. We don't have those yet, so this will be a placeholder for that. I expect it would be a vehicle for anything else this committee wants to consider with respect to adult use cannabis. I don't know if we will get this in time, quite frankly, in a short session. I hope we will, but in order to make sure that we're ready to move, if we do get it, that's the purpose of having this on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, just a quick question, if I could, for clarification purposes. Was there something in the statute that passed last year that required them to report back to us, and that's why we've got the placeholder? Or is this just in case they found something as they're moving forward that we may have to address?
The first part, Senator, yes, they actually are supposed to come up with additional regulations, particularly on the social equity side of this, and send them to us in this committee for review.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Please.
Yeah, I was pretty outspoken in my opposition to the underlying bill. Obviously, it did pass, and it's going to go forward. I'm happy to go ahead with moving this to consent if that's the will of the majority, with reservations that when we actually see something, if we indeed do see something, that I may just have to vote in opposition strenuously. But at this point in time, since it's merely a placeholder, I'm not going to object. I just wanted that on the record. So thank you, Mr.
I saw you lead the opposition in the Senate 3 times, which is fairly unheard of in the annals of legislative history.
Certainly is.
So any further comment or objection to moving this to a consent calendar?
Representative Cheeseman has a question.
Thank you, Holly, please.
Yes. And I'm willing to move this to consent calendar if we are looking at overarching, tweaks to the cannabis legislation and regulations. I really feel we must address the issue of bazaars and giveaways and clubs. If we have a regulated retail market, people should not be able to operate outside that. I think this is a real concern, and New York's confronting that now with a lot of aggressive enforcement. And I'd like to see DCP more involved as well as local law enforcement. So
I think, yeah.
we did move this to consent, but I think there's a lot out there. If we are going to have a regulated retail market, people should not be allowed to flout those that intent.
I think you will find a lot of bipartisan support for that, Representative. And this can be, even if we don't get anything from the Social Equity Council, this can be a vehicle for us to address something like that.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
I
any
also
further
have my hand up.
Please,
I'm sorry.
Senator.
So is this the mechanism that we're using in bypassing the regulation review committee? Because my understanding is that these regulations will not come before the regs review committee. No?
I believe these won't, Senator. There are additional sets of regulations coming from DCP, and I can't recall off the top of my head if those go through reg review or not. I believe they come to this committee as well. I just can't remember if they also go to review. I'd have to look at the statute. But there were different streams for different regulations, and this one in particular, I believe you're correct, does bypass reg review. This goes through general law and then the full legislature.
So I just want to say for the record that I don't think that we should be bypassing regs review. That's something that's set up. I'm not opposed to us having a concept, but I am opposed to us not following the process on having regs review look at these. And I think I've talked to Senator Maroney about this before. So I am concerned about that component of it, that the bill would bypass a section of the General Assembly that does look at all regs. And so I just wanted to say that for the record. Thank you very much.
And that's fair. And what we may end up doing with something like this is, frankly, if we have just bipartisan agreement on, for example, what Representative Cheeseman mentioned or other pieces of it that we think should actually be tweaks to the law, we can do that. And then we can decide if we want to and say these are regulations that should go to reg review and others are actual statutory tweaks that we will deal with. But that's something that I think we need to mull over per your comment, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we could have
that.
LCO do a review for us of the statute that passed last year and determine if it did state that any changes to a reg will go to general law versus going to regs review. And we understand why that would be, because if it's in state statute that it has to come to us, I don't know how we can ignore the law. Right. So I'd like to see if we get a opinion from LCO on why this committee was chosen versus regs review, if that is in fact the case.
Duke, Julia, if you guys, if you don't know off the top of your head, if you guys can put together a committee memo for us on that point, that would be great.
Yeah, we can look into it.
Great, terrific. Yeah, that's a great idea, Senator. I think it'd be worth us having that. Just let's understand the landscape as well that we're operating under.
And
James.
Chairman D'Agostino, I believe that part of the issue that Senator Austin's referring to is that within the bill, it asked DCP to promulgate or to put forward policies and procedures, and then they had 4 years to put forth the regs. And if the regs weren't put forth, then the policies and procedures would have the effect of law. And I think that is kind of, I think that may be what Senator Austin was referring to.
Right. Well, let's definitely make sure we have our arms around it from a committee leadership standpoint and from a whole committee standpoint in terms of what it is we'll be considering. Again, even if we get anything from the Social Equity Council. But I am viewing this as a vehicle for us to consider other concerns by the committee members that actually may just be straight statutory changes. But I think, the between the three senators here, I think those are all good recommendations. And Duke and Julie, I think if you guys put together just some guideposts for us in terms of there's so many different sections of the cannabis bill. Here's what we're considering from Social Equity Council. Here's the mechanism for review of that. Here's the mechanism for review of DCP and the timeline for review of DCP regulations, et cetera. And just so we can have that as a blueprint, that would be helpful. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that this go to the consent calendar with the consent of the members.
Thank you. See no objection, we will do that. All good comments. Thank you. And this is why this is such a great committee. Can I have a motion for an act for the Fair Right of Repair, the Fair Right to Repair Act?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you very much. I don't, James, I don't know if you wanted to touch on this briefly. It's something that we think we've mulled previously.
Yes, and we're looking at modeling it after the Massachusetts legislation that has passed, and so it will just give the ability to repair in both digital, and it is looking to extend it to automotive as well. So I'm looking forward to the public hearing to hear what comes forth on this issue. But it's something that I've heard from constituents, and I know that some other legislators reached out who had also had a request from constituents.
Yeah, on both sides, I might add. The questions or comments on our right to repair? All right. We have a motion to move this, or without objection, can we move this to the consent calendar?
So moved.
Thank you. Seeing none, we will do so. A motion for an act concerning the legislative commissioner's recommendations for technical and other changes to the consumer protection and related statutes.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Thank you very much, Senator. Again, self-explanatory. These are going to be technical revisions to our consumer protection statutes. A lot of this is just born of the fact that we have to take our public acts and put them into statutory form, and that requires some changes down the line to other statutes. I don't anticipate anything substantive here. Any objection to moving this to a consent calendar?
So moved.
All right, thank you. I think I can. Brian, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd like to just move the last ones all together since they're all DCP bills, and I'll read them for the record. It's a motion to review the following bills: an act concerning the Department of Consumer Protection's recommended conforming changes to the Liquor Control Act and related statutes, an act concerning recommendations by the Department of Consumer Protection concerning the Liquor Control Act and related statutes. I'll explain the difference between those two. An act concerning the Department of Consumer Protection's recommendations regarding food, drugs, and medical devices. An act concerning the Department of Consumer Protection's recommendations regarding consumers, retailers, and credit transactions. And finally, an act concerning the Department of Consumer Protection's recommendations regarding homemaker companion agencies, contractors, heating fuel, food establishments, continuing education, and appraisals all together. Can I have a motion for those bills?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. These are obviously the department's requests to us this year. They are various conforming and other changes that they are suggesting to the statutes as indicated. The reason there are two liquor control bills is one is a straight, very similar to the last bill we just discussed, a straight statutory. We've got to put into statute a lot of the different public acts that we've passed over the last couple of years. That has been a massive undertaking. It's taken LCO and DCP quite some time to do because there are other conforming changes again. So one of those is just a straight technical. The other one does have more substantive tweaks. Like, for example, we've heard from a number of participants in the marketplace about the change from a 750 milliliter bottle to 700 milliliter bottle. That kind of change is in here, making sure that still comports with our pricing controls and liquor, things like that. So that's the difference between those two bills for DCP. The rest are department acts. That language is drafted. I believe they've been released. You should all take a look at them because they're fairly extensive. And we got to pick through them, but we will hear those all at a public hearing and have the commissioner explain the various changes that she and her department heads would like. Questions? We move those to the consent calendar.
So moved.
Thank you. Seeing no objection, we'll move those to the consent calendar. All right, we have a consent calendar to move. I would ask for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
I think we got a second from Senator Kissel. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Sam, please go down the line.
Will do. This is a call to approve the consent calendar. First item, an act concerning consumer privacy. Second item, an act establishing a supermarket food donation program. Third, an act concerning the Liquor Control Act. Fourth, an act concerning physician assistance and the palliative use of marijuana. 5, an act concerning deaf and hard of hearing interpreters. 6, an act concerning recommendations by the Social Equity Council. 7, an act concerning the Fair Right to Repair Act. 8, an act concerning the Legislative Commissioner's recommendations for technical and other changes to the consumer protection and related statutes. 9, an act concerning the Department of Consumer Protection's recommended conforming changes to the Liquor Control Act and related statutes. 10, an act concerning recommendations by the Department of Consumer Protection concerning the Liquor Control Act and related statutes. 11, an act concerning the Department of Consumer Protection's recommendations regarding food, drugs, and medical devices. 12, an act concerning the Department of Consumer Protection's recommendations regarding consumers, realtors, and credit transactions. And 13, an act concerning the Department of Consumer Protection's recommendations regarding homemaker companion agencies, contractors, heating, fuel, food establishments, continuing education, and appraisals. Senator Maroney.
Senator Maroney casts his vote in the affirmative.
Representative D'Agostino.
Aye.
Representative, I didn't see your face. Can you repeat one more time?
Yes.
Thank you. Senator Fonfara. Representative Gibson.
Representative Gibson, yes.
Thank you, Representative. Senator
Whitcoast is a yes. Thanks, Sam.
Representative Rutigliano.
Representative Rutigliano was a yes.
Representative Ackert.
Representative Ackert is a yes.
Representative Ali Brennan.
Representative Ali Brennan votes yes.
Representative Arconti.
Arconti votes yes.
Representative Arconti, can I see your face, please?
Arconti votes yes.
Thank you. Representative Candelaria.
We're wrapping.
Representative Cheeseman.
Representative Cheeseman votes aye.
Representative Hayes.
Representative Hayes votes yes.
Thank you. Senator Kissel.
Senator Kissel votes yes.
Representative Luxembourg.
Luxembourg votes yes.
Senator Austin.
Senator Austin votes in the affirmative.
Representative Riley. Senator Winfield.
Senator Winfield in the affirmative.
Representative Winkler.
Representative Winkler votes yes.
Is there anyone's name who I did not call? And that concludes the roll, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sam. Why don't we leave the votes open until noon? Is everybody okay with that? Kevin, James?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, terrific. We'll leave the votes open until noon for anyone who didn't get a chance to vote. As we mentioned, we'll be putting together another list of concepts for the committee to consider for public hearing. So look for our email on that and our next meeting date. I don't have anything further. James, Kevin, Dave?
No.
All good, Mr. Chairman.
All right, terrific. We will leave votes open until 12. Thank you all and look forward to working with you again this year.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good morning, Representative.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Sorry, I was have another meeting going on at the same time.
So the committee voted, they had one vote, and it was on a consent calendar on all the concepts to be raised. So would you like me to go through them with you, or would you just like to?
No, don't even bother, because at the end of the day, we have to discuss them later on. So record my vote as a yes. So I thank you for that.
No problem. So you are a yes, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. You are recorded. There we go. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
My pleasure. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
I'm writing all this down to let him. So.
Questions, which insists that we do have to
Hi, Representative. You're on mute.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
There we go.
Hey,
Hey, how are you doing?
good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. So the committee just voted on a consent calendar to raise all the concepts on the agenda. So would you like me to go through that with you, or would you just like to vote?
I'll just vote. That's fine. Thank you. I read them and I'm aware of what they are.
Okay. So what is your vote?
In the affirmative.
Affirmative.
Representative
Okay.
Riley votes in the affirmative.
Sounds good. Okay, Representative Riley, you're all set.
Great, Sam. Have a good day.
You too, sir. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.